Respect is easy to give to uniforms. It's harder to give to the people who wear plain clothes, the ones who sweep floors, open gates, and clock out quietly while others barely notice their names. But life has a way of testing how we see people. And sometimes, the man you laugh at for pushing a mop once pushed through storms most people couldn't survive. At the security training facility, the rookies had a saying, "A man's job tells you who he is." They were about to find out just how wrong they were, when the janitor at the gate turned out to be someone who'd once commanded respect from entire battalions. His name was Jason, and 15 seconds later, none of them would ever forget it. Before we continue, thank you for watching and supporting these stories. They're not just about action, they're about what we often miss in everyday life, the quiet strength of people we overlook. If you believe respect should never depend on titles, uniforms, or paychecks, stay with us till the end. Because sometimes, the toughest man in the room isn't the loudest, he's the one sweeping the floor, waiting for the moment when truth finally speaks for itself. The morning started like any other, the kind of morning where routine wears a uniform of its own. At the Oak Ridge Tactical Training Facility, everything ran on schedules, ranks, and respect, or at least, what people thought respect meant. Rows of young security recruits jogged across the yard, boots hitting the ground in rhythm, their voices echoing in the crisp air as they barked chants they barely believed in. They were rookies, 6 of them, full of caffeine, confidence, and the kind of energy that often comes before understanding. Their names were Shane, Carter, Drew, Malik, Tom, and Leo. Together, they were trouble, not the dangerous kind, the careless kind. The kind that comes from youth mixed with just enough authority to make someone forget humility. They called themselves the Six, because they did everything together: train, eat, argue, laugh. And sometimes they mocked the people who weren't like them. "Man, look at him," Shane said one morning, nodding toward a gray-haired janitor pushing a mop near the fence line. "Dude, S been cleaning this place since before we were born." Malik laughed. "Bet he's never even fired a gun." "Or maybe he's just cleaning up after people who actually matter," Carter added, smirking. Jason didn't react. He never did. Every morning he showed up before sunrise, gray jumpsuit, quiet steps, a thermos of black coffee in hand. He swept the halls, repaired door locks, fixed lights in the locker room, and kept mostly to himself. There was something about him, not weakness but control. The kind of stillness that didn't come from laziness, but from knowing there was nothing left to prove. He didn't talk much, didn't ask for help, and when he worked, his movements were precise, like every action was part of a rhythm only he could hear. "Guy gives me the creeps," Leo muttered one afternoon, watching Jason from across the yard. "He just stares sometimes, doesn't even blink." "Yeah," Tom added, "and what's with the gloves? Who wears gloves to mop?" Shane grinned. "Old habits, probably retired from janitor school." They all laughed. But behind the sound of their laughter, Jason quietly kept working, wiping the same section of the gate until the metal gleamed. He didn't look up, didn't say a word, but if someone had been close enough, they might have noticed something small, the way his hands moved with the muscle memory of precision, like he'd once done something far more deliberate than cleaning. The rookies never wondered why the head of security, Sergeant Miller, always greeted Jason with a nod, or why the training officers never spoke down to him. They just thought he was another man who'd run out of choices. That was about to change. It was a Thursday when everything unraveled. The recruits were finishing their afternoon drills, sweat slicking their uniforms, laughter bouncing between them as they slung towels around their shoulders and headed toward the locker rooms. They were off duty, relaxed, too careless to notice that the world doesn't always give warnings. Outside, near the main gate, Jason was standing by the fence, tightening a loose bolt on the lock. His toolbox rested beside him, neat and organized, every piece in its place. The sun caught on the silver threads of his hair as a breeze carried dust across the yard. Shane spotted him first. "Yo, look who's still here. Doesn't that guy ever go home?" "Maybe he sleeps in the supply closet," Malik joked. The others laughed again, not cruelly, just thoughtlessly. But words, even thoughtless ones, have a way of bending back toward those who speak them. As they approached the gate, they noticed Jason was on the inside of the fence, adjusting the latch mechanism. The gate was slightly open, the outer security system disabled for maintenance. "Hey, old-timer," Shane called out. "You sure you're allowed to touch that?" Jason didn't turn. "Just making sure it opens when it should," he said, his voice calm low. "Yeah," Drew smirked. "And when should it open exactly?" Jason straightened up slowly, turned, and met his gaze. "When someone's earned the right to walk through." The rookies exchanged looks, confused, half amused. "Oh, he's got jokes now," Carter said, stepping closer. "Maybe you can show us how you earn that right, huh?" Jason didn't answer. He just bent down to close his toolbox, methodically snapping the latches shut. Something in that calmness bothered Shane. People like him, loud, proud, untested, often mistake stillness for weakness. "Hey, we're talking to you," Shane said, stepping in front of him. "You think just because you've got a mop and some wrinkles, you can act like you own the place?" Jason glanced past him toward the main building, where Sergeant Miller was talking to an officer. He sighed, not from fear, not from tension, but from something heavier, the kind of sigh that belongs to someone who's seen this before. "I don't own anything," Jason said quietly, "but I do take care of what's mine." That line landed differently. There was something in the way he said it, not defensive, not aggressive, just final. Tom stepped forward, laughing. "What's that supposed to mean, you guarding the fence, old man?" Jason looked at him for a long moment, a gaze that wasn't threatening, but steady enough to make Tom shift uneasily. "Not the fence," Jason said softly, "the people behind it." The laughter stopped. Malik scoffed, trying to break the tension. "Man, whatever, you act like this is war or something." Jason picked up his toolbox. "You'd be surprised what it feels like when it is." Then he turned and started walking toward the maintenance shed. The rookies stared after him. "Yo," Shane said, breaking the silence. "You hear that? He's talking like he's some kind of soldier." "Maybe he was," Carter said sarcastically. "What, the Janitor Corps?" They laughed again, but not all of them joined in. Leo was quiet, his brow furrowed. "Guys," he said, "what if he's not joking?" Shane rolled his eyes. "You think that guy's military? Come on, look at him." Leo didn't answer, but the unease lingered. The next day came with rain. By late afternoon, the sky was a slate of gray and the yard shimmered with puddles. The recruits were assigned gate duty, rotating in pairs to monitor vehicles and deliveries. Shane and Carter were on shift when a small delivery truck approached the gate, the engine sputtering. The driver looked nervous, too nervous for a man dropping off supplies. "Stop right there," Shane ordered, raising a hand. "ID." The driver hesitated. "Oh, it's in the back, I just need to." "Stay where you are," Jason's voice cut in from behind them. The rookies turned. Jason was standing near the guard post, drenched from the rain, holding his maintenance clipboard. "This is our post, old man," Shane snapped. "We've got it." Jason didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the truck. "No, you don't." "What's your problem?" Carter demanded. "Go mop something." Jason's jaw flexed, but his tone stayed calm. "There's no delivery scheduled for today." Carter frowned. "How would you know that?" "Because," Jason said, his voice dropping, "I wrote the schedule." Before they could respond, the driver's hand shifted toward the dashboard just slightly, but enough. In that instant, Jason moved. It wasn't fast in the showy sense. It was efficient, surgical. 1 second he was standing still, the next he'd closed the distance between them, grabbed the door handle, and yanked it open with a force that made the rookies flinch. The driver froze as Jason's other hand pulled a small concealed pistol from the glove compartment and disarmed it in one motion. The entire scene happened in less than 15 seconds. The rookies stood there, soaked in rain and disbelief, staring at the man they'd mocked for weeks. Jason placed the unloaded gun on the hood, his movements precise, deliberate. "If that weapon had gone off," he said quietly, "you'd both be dead before you called for backup." Shane's voice trembled. How did you?" Jason stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Because once, a mistake like that almost cost me an entire team." Carter blinked, speechless. "You were military." Jason zipped up his damp jacket, rain dripping from his collar. "Navy," he said. Then he paused, looking them in the eye. "SEAL." The world went silent. Even the rain seemed to hesitate. as if the air itself had remembered who it was standing in front of. Sergeant Miller appeared moments later, alerted by the commotion. When he saw Jason, he nodded, not surprised, not curious, just respectful. "Everything good here?" Jason handed him the weapon. "Just a bad delivery." Miller studied the rookies, their stunned faces, their embarrassment hanging heavier than the rain. He didn't scold them. He didn't have to. As Miller took the gun and walked away, Jason turned back to the 6 young men, soaked, humbled, silent. He didn't gloat, he didn't smirk, he just said, "You train to protect people. Start by learning what that means." Then he walked away, toolbox in hand, leaving only the sound of rain hitting the pavement, and 6 rookies who would never look at a janitor the same way again. The rain didn't stop that night. It softened into a steady rhythm, tapping on the metal roof of the training barracks long after most of the rookies had gone to sleep. But for 6 of them, Shane, Carter, Drew, Malik, Tom, and Leo, sleep didn't come easy. They sat in the common room, uniforms half unbuttoned, staring at the security feed that looped silently on the small monitor by the wall. It showed the gate, the puddles, the fence, and Jason, working alone under the floodlight, sweeping away debris left from the storm. "Man," Malik muttered, finally breaking the silence, "did anyone know?" No one answered. Tom leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "A SEAL. The guy's been mopping floors next to us for months and no one said a word." Leo nodded slowly. "You know what's crazy? He didn't even look proud when he said it." Carter sighed, didn't look ashamed either. They all sat there, replaying the moment, the calmness, the precision, the way Jason had handled the gun like it was muscle memory, not instinct. 15 seconds. That's all it took to turn everything they thought they knew upside down. Shane rubbed his hands together. "He saved our lives today," he said quietly. Drew looked up. "Yeah, and we've been treating him like dirt." For once, nobody had a comeback. Outside, the wind howled against the fence. Inside, 6 young men sat in silence, realizing that respect isn't about who salutes first, it's about who still stands when no one's watching. The next morning came gray and cold. Jason was already there, same as always, sweeping near the main gate. The world might have changed for the rookies, but for him, it hadn't. His steps were steady, his eyes calm. Routine didn't care about reputation. When the rookies arrived for their shift, they hesitated before walking up to him. "Morning," Shane said first, voice low. Jason looked up briefly. "Morning." Malik cleared his throat. "Listen, about yesterday." Jason raised a hand gently. "No need." "But we—" He shook his head. "You learned that's enough." There was no edge in his voice, no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. And somehow that made them feel even smaller, not because he forgave them easily, but because he didn't need to be angry in the first place. Carter stepped forward. "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Jason gave a faint smile. "Would it have changed how you saw me?" They looked at each other, guilty, silent. "That's what I thought," Jason said softly, turning back to his broom. "Respect's only real when it doesn't need an introduction." The words hung in the air, simple but heavy. The rookies didn't move for a while. Then slowly, they joined him. 6 young men standing beside a janitor, sweeping the gate in silence. Not because they had to, but because they finally understood why they should. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Not loudly, not all at once, but in small, quiet ways, the kind of ways Jason respected most. The rookies started showing up earlier. They double-checked their drills. They cleaned their stations before they were told. And when Jason passed by, they didn't look away anymore. They nodded, spoke to him, sometimes even asked for advice, not about cleaning but about life. He never said much, just listened. And when he did speak, his words carried weight. One afternoon, while repairing a jammed lock with Leo, Jason asked casually, "Why'd you join?" Leo shrugged. "Wanted to prove something." "To who?" Leo hesitated. "My dad, I guess. He thinks I quit too easily." Jason tightened the bolt. "So don't quit." "That simple, huh?" Jason looked at him. "It always is. Doing it, that's the hard part." Leo nodded slowly. He'd remember that line for the rest of his life. The rookies didn't know much about Jason's past, just fragments they pieced together from overheard words and quiet gestures. They learned that he'd served 20 years, that he'd lost friends in places the world didn't talk about, that he'd come home to find silence louder than any war. And so he worked, not because he needed money, but because staying still felt too close to remembering. He found peace in purpose, even if that purpose was fixing locks and sweeping floors. Because to Jason, dignity wasn't in what you did, it was in how you did it. And that was the lesson they were all learning without realizing it. One cold Friday, just before dusk, Sergeant Miller gathered the rookies for inspection. Jason was nearby, replacing a damaged bulb above the entrance. "Listen up," Miller said. "Next week we're running a high-stress simulation, hostage recovery, full perimeter lockdown. It's meant to test how you handle fear under pressure. You'll be graded individually and as a team." Shane nodded, trying to sound confident. "We'll be ready, sir." Miller gave a faint smile. "You'd better be, because the man designing the scenario," he turned slightly toward Jason, "has more experience than the rest of us combined." The rookies froze. Jason glanced down, clearly not thrilled by the attention. "Don't make a big deal of it, Sarge." Miller ignored that. "If he agrees, Mr. Statham will be supervising next week's drill." Jason sighed quietly but didn't argue. "I'll set it up," he said. The rookies exchanged glances, half nervous, half excited. Leo whispered, "This is gonna be brutal." The following week, the simulation began. The rookies were blindfolded, handcuffed, and dropped in different parts of the facility. Sirens blared. Smoke filled the corridors. Loudspeakers shouted conflicting orders to disorient them. Jason watched from the control room, silent. His eyes tracked every move, every hesitation, every panic, every mistake. When the test ended, they were drenched in sweat, exhausted, gasping for air. They defailed most of the objectives. But Jason didn't criticize. He just stood in front of them, hands in his jacket pockets, calm as always. "You want to know what you did wrong?" he asked. Shane nodded, still panting. "Yeah." Jason's eyes swept over them. "You thought you were in charge." They frowned. Jason continued. "You treated it like a fight, but a real crisis isn't about power, it's about awareness, trust, respect." He paused, letting that settle. "You looked out for yourselves instead of each other. That's why it fell apart." Malik spoke quietly. We didn't know what to do." Jason nodded. "That's because you've only ever trained for control, not humility. The moment you forget that, you stop protecting and start reacting." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The weight of it filled the room. Then he added softly, "That lesson cost me more than it should have. Don't let it cost you." No one spoke after that. A few days later, the rookies gathered again, this time by choice. They stood near the gate, same place it had all started. Jason was there, polishing the metal latch. Shane stepped forward. "Sir, we wanted to say thank you." Jason looked up. "For what?" "For showing us what respect actually means," Shane said, "and for not giving up on us when you could have." Jason studied their faces, 6 young men who had once laughed at him. Now they stood straighter, spoke softer, carried themselves differently. "You earned it yourselves," he said quietly. "I just held up the mirror." Carter smiled. "Still, we won't forget." Jason nodded once, a small, genuine gesture. "Good. Then maybe next time when you see someone cleaning up after you, you'll remember who might be behind those hands." He closed his toolbox and started walking away. Leo called after him, "Hey Jason, you ever miss it, the Navy?" Jason stopped, thought for a moment, then turned slightly. "Sometimes, but peace isn't about where you are, it's about what you stop fighting." Then he kept walking, his silhouette fading into the setting sun, calm, deliberate, at peace. Weeks later, the rookies graduated. Their ceremony was small, just a few officers, some applause, and quiet pride. As they stood lined up in formation, Sergeant Miller handed each of them a folded card. No one knew what it was at first, until Shane opened his. Inside, written in clean, steady handwriting. "You don't earn respect by asking for it. You earn it by living like you already have it. J.S." They all looked around for him, but Jason wasn't there. Later that evening, after the ceremony ended, they found his janitor's cart parked by the gate, broom standing upright, tools neatly placed. thermos still warm. A note sat on top. "You're ready. Keep the place clean, not just the floors." The rookies stood there for a long moment, the floodlight humming above them. None of them spoke. Because some lessons don't end with applause. They end with silence, and a gate that now felt heavier with meaning. As the light flickered, Shane glanced at the others. "He'll come back one day," he said quietly. Leo nodded. "Yeah, but even if he doesn't, he already left enough behind." And somewhere beyond that gate, under a sky that had just started to clear, Jasonstatham walked alone down the wet road, the world quiet, steady, and clean. He didn't need to be seen to matter. Because the strongest men never do.